About professional software development. So, there's a lot of really bad takes and things that I've learned over the years being a developer. I started professionally writing software when I was 18. Um, and, I started working and then I went to college. So I've kind of done both paths. Um, and there's a lot of things that I see online that um, really bother me. First of all, you do not need a software engineering background. Like you don't have to be a student, you don't have to go to college to be a developer. That's not required. However, on the flip side, I see a lot of people that are very upset about um, folks that do CS degrees and how they're useless. And that's also not true. There's a lot of really useful information you get in a computer science degree in college that a lot of people don't take advantage of. So, boot camps are okay. I see people putting those down. It's completely fine to do a boot camp. Um, you know, the issue with boot camps is you can't stop after the boot camp. You have to keep learning. And there's a lot of stuff that boot camps won't teach you, and you have to learn on your own. So, if and that's true in general in software. If you want to write software for a living, you're going to have to keep learning. That's that's just how it is. Um, you know, uh, so that's pretty much all I want to say about that. I if you are on the path where you didn't go get a computer science degree, here's a couple things that you should probably get books on long term and learn about. Get an algorithms and data structure kind of book that you'd use, as in a curriculum. Get some books on agile or software engineering methodologies, understanding a little bit about waterfall and agile. I mean, waterfall doesn't come up that much, so if you want to learn Scrum or Kanban or one of the other ones, go for it. Just read a book on that. Get familiar with it at least. There's really good books on databases. If you're going to have to use relational databases, you're going to want to get a book on it because people struggle with that hard. And, if you start out with NoSQL and you end up having to use a relational database, it's outright strange, and vice versa for that matter. NoSQL databases vary greatly in how they're structured, how they work. If you learn Mongo, that doesn't mean you understand Cassandra or Redis or any other type of data store. So all of those things you should kind of create or interpret as their own buckets. As far as software testing, one thing that I see engineers fail to write tests for their code. That's a big mistake. If you're a senior developer, it's going to save you time. It's something that you learn. Writing some unit tests can save your butt. It can help you figure out problems. And, some companies use SonarCube or other products like that, and they'll ding you on, like the company I work for now has a really strict policy where new code has to have 96% coverage, and the total code base needs 86% currently. Now, that's an absolutely ridiculous number, in my opinion. I think 80% is good enough, personally. But we have this code base that has a lot of tech debt in it, and it's been a real struggle. Every time we touch a file, SonarQube blocks the pipeline again because no one ever bothered to write tests. And so we have all this really crazy code that isn't tested, and the intent of all this code isn't known. It's not well documented, and it's just a mess. And that's something testing is critical. And ideally, you have unit tests and integration tests. People fight about what that means and how they're implemented. Get a book on testing, or there's a lot of free material on GitHub around or on GitHub on YouTube about that. Um, Look at it. Another thing is comments. Okay. I've seen people advocate lately for no comments in code and that you should be writing code that's so well self documenting that you don't need comments. That's absolutely ridiculous. Yes, the code should have good variable names, it should have good function names, it should be easy to read and understand, but That doesn't mean that you don't add comments ever. You don't want useless comments. You don't want this is a function named Bob that does Bob things. But you can be ridiculous about that. But if you're writing something that's really strange and specific to a design decision, or you get a story that has a really complex scenario and you find a bug and you have to do this really weird hack, that should be documented in the code. And again, I've seen people that say, well, I'll just put it in my git commit message. Well, here's the problem with that. People will change from git to some other thing in the future, when whatever the new shiny version control system is that replaces git someday. And don't think it won't happen. I mean, I've dealt with CVS, SCCS, RCS, Subversion, um, TFS, Git, obviously. I can't even think of all the freaking version control systems I've dealt with. Visual Store Safe. Um, there are so many, and people change them, and they don't always import the history from the repository like you'd think. Or they'll get into a habit where, oh, mono repos aren't cool anymore. Let's go to individual repos for everything. And then a couple years later, the trend will go back, like and you'll get mono repos again. And depending on, there's hot takes about which one is better, and I personally prefer having individual repos. But if you're going to do the mono repo thing, that's a mess if you have to break it up later. You lose that history. People don't dig in the old repo after a while to figure out why something is the way it is. It'll get lost. So that's something to do. I know this video is turning into a rant, but it's one of those things. Like, another topic is, when you're a software engineer, you have to talk to people. You can be the best engineer in the world, but if you can't communicate with other people, if you can't talk to people in a civilized manner, if you can't be reasonable and understand that everybody has different knowledge, and maybe you don't know everything, nobody knows everything. And one of the reasons that I do my open source development work, like on Midnight BSD, for example, is because it keeps me humble. And, it's been one of the best tools for me, because early in my career, I got a bit of an ego for a while, and I started being a dick. And, people don't want to work with you when you're a dick and you're a know-it-all. There are people that just know things, and there are other people that struggle all the way through things. And both happen, and both are okay. And the struggling person is good at something, okay? Don't assume they're bad at everything. I've worked with people that really struggled in some areas, but were absolutely brilliant in others. And you just have to give everyone a little credit. So, I think that's the most important thing here is, you can be a senior engineer. Do you know what that really means? For some people, it's, oh, you have enough experience, I guess I'll pay you senior now. It's not really just that. You have to manage projects. You have to be able to talk to others. You have to be able to mentor people. And I've seen a lot of software engineers that work their way up and they get to be senior level, and they never go any farther because they never master all of the other skills that they need to be a senior developer. You can't just have junior people do nothing. You can't do their work for them. If you're that guy that, my whole team's useless, I got to do all the work myself, that's your problem. If you're the senior developer and that's the situation, you failed at your job, because you should be empowering people to do their work for them. They should be able to code, they should be able to write code that's working. And if you can't mentor people and you can't teach them things so they can do better code on their own, you suck as a senior dev. That's just how it is. And, some people are not good at mentoring, and there's different levels of bad with that. But if you're not even talking to junior devs, if you're not doing code reviews, if you're not having them do pair programming with you occasionally, I don't think that people need to do pair programming all the time or mob programming all the time. I think if you're learning something new, you're trying to teach something, it's extremely valuable, but it should be scoped at that. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. You should do code reviews, but you don't need to do pair programming or mob programming all the time. But those are good tools if you're mentoring people. So, you know, the point here is, you've got to be good at communication. You got to be able to do things to be a good developer. And if you can't talk to people in a respectful tone, get out of the line of work. Find something else. This is not a job. Contrary to popular belief, this isn't just people that sit in their basement all day and don't talk to people. You have to have some communication skills. They don't have to be perfect, but you should be able to write things. You should be able to talk to people without being a dick. That's just how it is. So I think I'm going to stop here because I'm getting really ranty, and that wasn't the intent of this video. But yeah, thanks for listening.